Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Sanyukta from Vista InfoSec. I hope our last video of series OWASP Top 10 was helpful and informative, which gives overall idea of vulnerability security misconfiguration. Now in this video, we back with our new topic in our journey through the OWASP Top 10, which describes A06 vulnerable and outdated components vulnerability. In the modern digital age, technology is a part and parcel of our everyday lives. However, there are serious threats inherent in use of web applications. Software risks can come from various sources, but one of the most prevalent is using vulnerable open source and third-party components. Although public open source libraries, packages, and frameworks enhance the modern software development process, the security gaps in components have opened the door to potentially malicious activities. Every day, hackers find new devastating methods of exploiting vulnerabilities for personal gain. If software developers use unsupported and out of date components, the software becomes susceptible to the security vulnerabilities. Once you detect a vulnerability, the criminals may have already discovered it and are actively working to leverage the flaw. How can hackers exploit this vulnerability, you may ask? This is exactly what we are going to discuss here, among other things. So let's get started. If a software component is no longer maintained, it is considered a vulnerable and outdated component that can introduce serious security issues. Whether you are into app design or web development, you can write 100% secure code and still be exposed to vulnerabilities. The question arises how it is possible. The answer is simple: through the use of vulnerable components. If the components you use in a software building process are outdated, unpatched, or contain serious flaws, your organization, customers, and application users will become soft targets for hackers. Threat actors can leverage these flaws to take over the server, gain access to the application's data, or compromise the system entirely. As software solutions change and evolve, there comes an urgent need for development teams to update or replace components to prevent potential security breach. Vulnerable and outdated components was previously titled using components with known vulnerabilities and is contains the second rank in top 10 community survey, but also had enough data make to top 10 via data analysis. This category moves from place 9 in 2017 and is known issue that we struggle to test and access risk. It is only category not have any common vulnerability exposure, that is CVEs, mapped to the included CWEs. So difficult exploit and impact weights of 5.0 are factored into their scores. Third-party components are omnipresent in web applications. Libraries, frameworks, and other system components are used more and more because they reduce cost and make development easier. However, like any system, these third-party components may contain vulnerabilities that can be exploited in attacks on web applications. Furthermore, exploits that are discovered and often made public can have a snowball effect, compromising an entire web applications, servers, database systems, etc. Now let's see what are the vulnerable and outdated components. It refers to the use of open source or proprietary code that contains software vulnerabilities or is no longer maintained. This code can be in form of libraries or frameworks, and for web applications this can be include PHP, Angular, Django, and many more others. The risk of using vulnerable and outdated components is that attackers can exploit them to gain unauthorized access to web applications or its data. This can lead to a variety of security problems such as data breaches, financial losses, and reputational damage. Using vulnerable and outdated components, attackers can exploit vulnerabilities like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, remote code execution, and many more. Moreover, if these components are no longer supported by their developers, they may not receive security updates or patches for newly discovered vulnerabilities. Some common issues with vulnerable and outdated components include: first, lack of awareness. Many may not be aware of the latest security vulnerabilities or have a process to identify and mitigate risks. Second, lack of resources. Some organizations may not have the staff or the budget to keep their components up to date, or they may not have the tools to identify and mitigate risk. Third, lack of documentation. Some organizations may not have good documentation of their software dependencies. This can make it difficult to identify and track vulnerable and outdated components. And fourth, lack of security culture. Some organizations may not have strong security culture. This can lead to complacency and lack of attention to security risk. So what are the types of vulnerable and outdated component? In complex project, the lack of visibility of third-party components remains persistent challenge. Such instances lead to use of vulnerable open source software and failure of security patching and regular updates. Types of vulnerable and outdated components are categorized and mapped to the following three common weaknesses and enumerations. First, failure to maintain components. Flaw that occur due to presence of unused features along with insufficient patch management and other presentative maintenance controls on modern application development pipelines. Second, out-of-date support systems, relying on outdated versions of software packages in development. And third, component misconfiguration, third-party package components causing conflict with the overall system configuration. How to detect vulnerable and outdated components? To detect the usage of outdated components that contain potential vulnerabilities, you have to fingerprint the technologies, collect the names, versions, and other specifics about the technologies the software employs. These techniques include analyzing HTML elements, triggering errors, forced browsing, source code. So, in analyzing HTML elements, as a rule, the HTTP traffic contains cookies, redirection URLs, header values, HTTP status code information, and more. However, you can prevent unauthorized activity or identify unused network resources only if you know how to analyze this information. Thus, you can use browser extension tools to see the technologies used on website you visit based on HTML page components and headers. For example, you can use the extension which is known as Vapalizer. Triggering errors. The practice of stressing the application and triggering verbose errors can give you a hint about technologies employed. With the help of an automated software testing technique known as fuzzing, you can find coding errors and security loopholes by randomly feeding invalid, unexpected, or random data as inputs in an application. Third, forced browsing. This method aims to provide access to resources that are not linked with the application but are still present on the server. It allows you to search the domain directory for old configuration files, typical login protocols, and README files containing information about the archive of computer software and possibly the name and the version of the components. And fourth, source code. If you are authorized to access the application source code, check the list of dependencies to see the packages employed in the project. This is all about how to detect vulnerable and outdated component. Now let's see how the attacker get access. A software component is a part of a system or application that extends functionality of applications such as module, software package, or API. Component-based vulnerabilities occur when a software component is unsupported, out of date, or vulnerable to the known exploit. You may use vulnerable software components in production environment, posing a threat to web application. For example, an organization may download and use software components such as OpenSSL and fail to regularly update or patch the component as flaws are discovered. Since many software components run with the same privilege as the application itself, any vulnerabilities or flaws in the component can result in threat to the application. Using components with known vulnerability makes your application susceptible to the attackers that targets any part of the application stack. For example, the following attack types are the few types that may target known component vulnerabilities, which are code injection, buffer overflow, command injection, and cross-site scripting. In the following scenario, the attacker exploits an unpatched system to execute malicious code on the server. The attacker gains access to the organization's internal network. The attacker runs a scanning tool to locate internal systems with unpatched or outdated components, and last, the attacker exploits a flaw in outdated components that allows them to install malicious code on the application server. This vulnerability is a wide open door through which intruders can easily penetrate the system and gain access to the sensitive data. Here are some real-world examples of breaches caused by the OWASP A06. Panama Papers. The Panama Papers is considered as largest breach ever in terms of the sheer volume of data leaked. Hackers stole the files from the computer systems of law firm and corporate service provider Mossack Fonseca. In 2016, it was the world's fourth greatest company providing offshore financial services. The leak of more than 11 million confidential documents, including 2.6 terabytes of information belonging to high-ranking politicians and public figures from more than 50 countries, was caused by the exploitation of outdated, unpatched versions of durable CMS and WordPress. Ubuntu forums. In 2016, it is hacked a database of Ubuntu forums website. The bad guy leveraged the SQL injection flaw in the forum runner add-on for B Bulletin, which had not yet been patched. By exploiting the vulnerability, they accessed the forum's user table containing usernames, email addresses, and internet protocol addresses for 2 million registered users. Fortunately, malicious operators did not receive any valid user passwords. The IT team has installed the more security web application firewall to prevent similar cyber attacks and has brought vBulletin component vulnerabilities up to the latest patch level. Equifax data breach. The Equifax data breach is one of the most famous hacker attack related to using outdated and vulnerable components. In 2017, attackers took advantage of security in Equifax systems. They compromised the personal information of 148 million American consumers, such as first and last names, phone numbers, home addresses, birth dates, driver's license numbers, and society's social security numbers. Equifax failed to update its public website with the latest version of Apache's routes. The company didn't apply the appropriate security patches to remove a widely known vulnerability that allowed the breach to happen. It is crucial for organizations to be conscious of risk using vulnerable components and follow relevant guidelines to eliminate them. When it comes to cybersecurity, awareness is your best defense. Let's explore some of the most effective preventions and mitigations for this vulnerability. Enable software composition analysis. Software composition analysis is an automated process that analyzes open source packages incorporated into the software. With SCA, security experts can identify the risk vulnerabilities associated with third-party components brought into project. SCA tools provides a complete inventory of project software assets, all components, their supporting libraries, as well as direct and indirect dependencies. SCA raises the developers' awareness of security concerns and potential weaknesses, allowing them to create mitigation plans and take necessary steps to prevent activities. Second, install web application firewalls. Web application firewall helps protect website and web applications by placing a protective shield between the system and the internet that monitors HTTP traffic. Web application firewalls are crucial security defense against various attacks including SQL injection, remote file inclusion, and cross-site scripting. With the right web application firewall in place, development teams can inspect incoming traffic and block malicious HTTP requests before they reach the web application or user. Even if your application, service, or server is vulnerable, the web application firewall solution will not let malicious requests through. Third, implement patch management process. IT professionals should formalize their approach to the patch management to keep up with the newly released security patches and enhance overall software performance. Proper patch management includes identifying and prioritizing patching needs, obtaining testing, and installing patches to update or repair existing code. Software programs, applications, and embedded systems tend to have technical problems that require timely fixes. Patches can be used to fix vulnerabilities, rectify errors, and plug security gaps. Failure to update the components in time poses a significant security risk and levels your operating systems vulnerable to malicious attacks. Moreover, it complicates further updates. Based on the number of projects built on the same vulnerable component version, the time required to run tests and apply patches would increase exponentially. And fourth, conduct penetration testing. Penetration testing is a planned attack on an information system where security experts take the same approach as an attacker to find the weaknesses and crucial vulnerabilities. By proactively hunting for web vulnerable components, you can address cybersecurity issues and fix before the system is deployed. Penetration testing is one of the most effective way to keep your information system secure by continuous monitoring for web security vulnerabilities. Professional pen testers at Vista InfoSec use advanced tools to examine the target applications for weaknesses and protect organizations from unwelcome attempts to access their computer systems. How to combat this vulnerability? Development teams and security managers require defensive measures to malicious activity and ensure their organization is not left open to cybersecurity threats. The most practical ways to address components-based vulnerability include the following. Rely on OWASP, SANS, CWE, and CERT coding standards to improve software performance and reduce vulnerability exposure. Implement automated alert and patching tools to ensure a secure software development lifecycle process and give your development teams a snapshot of potential flaws. Keep a comprehensive inventory of all components used in application to ensure only approved elements are in place. Continuously review and update the list. Prefer sign packages to minimize the risk of including a change harmful components. Eliminate deprecated or unused components, items, folders, features, and dependencies to lessen the possibility of security flaws. Regularly scan libraries, components, and their dependencies to detect weaknesses. Include components only from official sources via secure links and verify to ensure compliance with legal standards and regulations. Before I conclude this session, I just want to say today's world runs on a technology, software applications, solutions, and platform touch almost every aspect of our lives. Yet, they also come with a security risk that create a window of opportunity for attackers to cause serious problems to application users and organizations, even to big and well-known ones. Incidents occur, but if you are well informed and prepared, you can do a much better job of dealing with web security vulnerabilities. For this reason, development teams must sharpen their focus on the highly exploitable high impact vulnerabilities and follow secure software development practices. Knowing about the vulnerabilities as early as possible helps security practitioners understand the issue and the craft the most secure fix. Software developers must take a proactive measures to mitigate the risk and avoid malicious attack and prevent breaches against the organization. This is all about the vulnerability A06 vulnerable and outdated components, and I'll see you in while covering other topic in our next video. Thank you.